Last week, I had a look at St John's Road as an alternative to Bridge Road. Frankly, I didn't think much of it at the time, partly due to the very steep section near Wentworth Park. Bob from Bike Leichhardt then got in touch and suggested that I give it another go, this time using Darling Street to avoid the steep section. Bob's got the local knowledge, so I certainly thought that was worth a good shot. Before we get to the ride, let's do a bit of history. It appears most of Glebe as we know it was built between 1841 and 1915, most of which happened between 1871 and 1891, well before the introduction of the motor vehicle. Accommodation within easy walking distance of city workplaces or public transport links was of fundamental importance to potential residents and developers. In other words, the place was built for walking. During the time of the green bans in the 1970s, most of the residents of the inner city didn't own cars. That wasn't unusual. If we look at this car ownership graph from Britain, in 1951, 85% of households had no car. That changed radically after World War II in every industrialised country. Whilst most households have only one car these days, there has also been an increase in the number of households that have 2 cars, 3 cars, or even more. Unsurprisingly, we've seen the modal share of walking and cycling in Australia drop from 40% in 1900 to around 5% today. Public transport usage has also collapsed post-war to around 10% today. Given the narrow alleys found in Glebe, I was amused to find this graph that indicates the share of travel by horse. Horses were still a relatively popular option until the end of World War I. And how did all of this impact on Glebe? Well, the Glebe Society aptly quotes the plague of motorised traffic with its noxious gases, carcinogenic particulates, noise pollution, and social disruption from freeway building. I'm guessing it's due to the return of the gentry, with well-heeled professionals pushing out the working class. The inner-city working class in the 1970s didn't own cars. The professional class did, and they then needed somewhere to park them. You could call this the process of people with soft hands pushing out those with hard hands. This photo of Erskineville from 1937 is pretty interesting because it shows what the inner city looked like before cars took over. There are very few cars moving on the streets. Well, it's a photo, how can you tell? But almost none parked outside houses or shops. We've taken a dense urban form that was built around walking and public transport and jammed thousands of cars into it. And then we wonder why there is contention for road space. Personally, I've always thought that the attraction of living in a place like this is that you don't need a car to survive. Just about everything you generally want to do is within easy walking distance. Shops, schools, medical centres, dentists, whatever. If not, public transport is pretty good. If you want to live here, you'd think you'd adapt your lifestyle to suit the urban form, rather than trying to adapt the urban form to meet your lifestyle. Yeah, but hey, it's a free country, and we can't tell others what to do with their lives. But what has happened right across the inner west is that the wealthy privileged class has muscled everyone else out of the public space through the inexorable takeover of every street for car parking. The young, the old, the poor, they've all been driven off the streets by traffic. Now it's been a long, slow process over 50 years or so, like slowly boiling a frog. And frankly, all of us, including myself, have been complicit. But maybe it's time for inner city car owners to check their privilege and give up some of the space that they've confiscated from the less fortunate. Before we have a look at St John's Road, here's a map from the City of Sydney Cycle Strategy and Action Plan that was published in 2007. This clearly shows that Bridge Road was identified as a proposed route 13 years ago. Bridge Road wasn't selected hastily and without thought as a place to put a cycleway. Council has simply acted on plans that have been gathering dust for over a decade. I wasn't aware of this until I went looking, so I'm sure this is a surprise to a lot of other people too. I'd also like to point out how outrageous it is that cafes close at 3 p.m. on Sundays. I like the look of this place, but the stacked up chairs outside clearly indicated it was closing up. And this cafe still had chairs out the front, but when I ordered, all I could get was a takeaway. This is terrible, and clearly something must be done. I rode down to Darling Street via Bridge Road, and I want to show you one of the things that I like about it. Because of the topography, if you've got a reasonable level of fitness, it's a road that flows. You can build up some speed and be moving fast enough to make merging pretty straightforward. In this instance, speed is your friend. If the cars are doing say 45 and you're doing 35, the speed difference is small and merging shouldn't be dangerous or hard under those conditions. We start down the bottom of Bridge Road where I'm heading west from the city. I take a left into Darling Street and the first thing I see are a steep incline and a 50 km/h sign. That means I'm going to be slogging slowly up this slope with potentially faster moving cars coming up behind me. It looks like this maxes out at 12%, as opposed to 8% for Bridge Road. As we slog up this hill, Notice the generally poor condition of the road surface. It gets worse in other places. This route is a mass of seams, patches, filled-in trenches, and manhole covers of all shapes and sizes that you need to avoid. Once we get over this crest, we have to go through two intersections where we have to stop or give way. St John's Road also contains two sets of traffic lights. Bridge Road, on the other hand, has potential hold-ups at two sets of traffic lights only. St John's Road, therefore, is more of a stop-start road by comparison. Normally you'd turn right at this intersection, but I wanted to see what the parking situation in the alleyways was like, so I turned left and had a look at the first one I found. Most of the blocks along here seem to have a garage opening into the rear lane, but whether they get used to parking is another matter though. I was interested in the amount of off-street parking in case it is necessary to put a separated cycleway along this road. Whether or not it gets one is determined by vehicle speeds and vehicle volumes. From this Austroads chart, it looks like over about 400 vehicles per hour justifies a physically separated cycleway. So if you're wondering how Bridge Road ended up with physical separation in both directions, look no further than this chart. As we turn right, you'll see the road patches that I mentioned earlier. In many places you are stuck with a choice of going around them to the left and there are no parked vehicles, or crashing over them to avoid being doored. The filled-in trenches seem to be placed perfectly in the line that cyclists want to ride in, and the same goes for all the metal utilities hatches as well. Note that this driver going past here was the only one I encountered where I thought that they were obeying the speed limit and where they moved over enough to give me plenty of room when they passed. After they went past, I then ducked into another side street to look at parking. In this case, the residents had no parking at the rear. Instead, they had a classic dunny lane out the back and nothing else. As I rode west, I did wonder if the road was wide enough to carry both a separated cycleway and parking on both sides. It seems that way, but you'd have to get out and measure it. The cycleway would preferably be against the curb and 1.5 metres wide to reduce the risk of being doored from the passenger side. The next 30 seconds is more of the same. Poor road surfaces, two drivers that I thought were speeding, and one pass that was kind of uncomfortable. St John's Road in theory should be quiet and safe, but the drivers around here don't make it feel that way. They're going fast because the original developers left us with a nice wide straight road, and the road has never been re-engineered to cope with modern vehicle speeds. I guess once the trams were removed, it was open slather on speeding around here. One of the complaints about Bridge Road is that the cycleway terminates before each set of lights, and you end up having to merge in with drivers around the same point where drivers are changing lanes to avoid a right turn lane. I checked whether the same holds true where St John's Road meets Glebe Road, and whilst there isn't a dedicated turn lane, as far as I could see, you certainly have some drivers turning right here. The same happens at Ross Street. If vehicle volumes justified putting a separated cycleway into St John's Road, I guess you'd end up with the same issues at each set of lights. The major advantage with St John's Road, though, is that the gradient coming into Glebe Road from the east is a lot less. You're under less pressure as you're pushing up the hill, and you can move faster. Another problem with Bridge Road at the moment is drivers coming out of side streets and either not looking or not stopping. I thought for a moment I was going to get cleaned up by this taxi, as it looked like they weren't going to stop. After they did come out, they went past uncomfortably close, even though there was no traffic coming the other way. There's a lot of potential for dooring along here from the parked cars, so you do want to stay out at least a metre to avoid a crash. St John's Road also has a pedestrian crossing with an island, but the island is in the middle of the road and there's no squeeze point. That is one advantage over Bridge Road. Is there enough room along here for a cycleway against the curb and cars parked further out? Oh, I don't know. I didn't pack the tape measure. But it does need thinking about. At this point I turned into Ross Street and went home via the Crescent and the Leafield Road. I was hot and bothered, and I didn't bother doing a run in the other direction. I think, however, I saw enough to roughly compare the two routes. So as we saw at the start, there's the issue of steepness. Bridge Road peaks out about 8% and St John's down the bottom is about 12%, and that's quite a difference between the two. It's only for a short distance, but it's pretty tough. Bridge Road has two sets of traffic lights, that's for sure, but St John's Road has the same two sets of traffic lights because it's got the same two roads to cross, but it adds a stop sign and a give way sign. So it could potentially add a bit of time to your journey having to do that. And of course, each intersection, certainly getting onto St John's Road, you have to turn right onto it coming from the direction I did, and you can have some fast moving traffic there, so that can be a bit risky getting onto that street. As far as the road surfaces go, it was chalk and cheese. I've always found Bridge Road to be pretty good. Look, sure, you get some leaf litter and rubbish, etc. in the cycleway at the moment that needs sweeping up, but the surface itself is fine. It's just the junk on top of it that needs removing. St John's Road, though, is a completely different matter. It really needs to be cleaned up and resurfaced end to end. It's just rough as guts. Bridge Road, of course, is a direct path, straight through, no turns, no nothing. Whereas St John's Road, you've got turns, and that includes turning right across busy traffic. And I don't know how you deal with actually getting on to St John's Road when you're coming from the west. What's going to be the best way to do that, given that turning onto St John's Road at the moment it's no right turn, and turning into Ross Street is also no right turn unless you're a bus. Look, I might be large, but no one's ever called me a bus. Bridge Road, another criticism is that the traffic lights, there's a right-hand lane and you've got to merge at that point when you come out of the cycle lane. Look, I really think the same problem would exist in St John's Road if we put a separated cycleway in. There is a difference, though, I guess, from just my short visits, is Bridge Road carries a heck of a lot more traffic because it's a more direct route. Who wants to drive on St John's Road when you have to do that kind of this way, that way, stop sign, give way sign? Sensibly, you just go straight down Bridge Road, and that's where the bulk of the traffic will be. And that would probably make that merging a bit easier because you don't have as many cars coming up behind you. So, same problem, but to a lesser extent, I would say. Of course, the other thing is when you're coming up to those points on St John's Road, the gradient is less at that point when you're coming up to the ridge where, for instance, Glebe Point Road runs. So you're not working as hard. Squeeze points at the pedestrian crossings, Bridge Road has certainly got them, and St John's Road doesn't, so it's a bonus for St John's Road. Bridge Road at the moment is fully separated from vehicles along most of the way. Okay, look, there's gaps at intersections and where there's bus stops and stuff like that. But I think if you took a tape measure out and measured it end to end, you'd probably find it's, I don't know, let me take a stab at 90%. Whereas in St John's Road is 0%, absolutely no physical separation. And I've been up and down it a couple of times now and noticed the same thing every time. Speeding drivers, close passes, really not very comfortable, I thought. Look, other locals might have a different view on it. They might say it's absolutely fine, but look, the times I've been out, that's all I've experienced. So if you're going to take us from a fully separated cycleway on Bridge Road, I'd say we'll give us a fully separated cycleway on St John's Road, so we're not going backwards. Bridge Road, well, we obviously know it's not wide enough to accommodate both a cycle lane and parking. Whereas St John's Road, is it wide enough? I don't know. Look, I think it's certainly worth asking the question. It looks wide to me. You probably have to reduce the speed limits, I guess, down to 40 kilometres an hour or less to reduce the risk of head-on collisions, etc., because the road might be a bit narrower. But look, I certainly think that's worth looking into. And that would certainly make St John's Road a lot better, I think, if that could be accommodated. And look, for me, the killer, though, is as a confident cyclist, and this, I guess, depends on where you fall in the Austroads definition of, beginner through to confident, etc. I like Bridge Road because it's direct, it's fast, and it's free-flowing. You get your momentum up and you just go. Okay, coming from the city's a slog up the hill, but once you get over that slog, off you go. You got momentum, you got energy, you just go. St John's Road, it's a slow, dead road. It's just a slog in both directions. It doesn't flow. It just seems to be a real grind. And it'll be interesting to go up and down here, 10 times, 20 times. Same rider, timing it with Strava, setting it up as segments, and seeing what the difference is in times between the two, because cyclists are no different to every other person that's trying to get from A to B. In general, if you're commuting or something like that, you want to get there quickly. You don't want to be messing around. You don't want to be delayed, etc. And just because you hop on a bicycle, you don't lose that basic urge, to get along in a hurry. So I think that's why, even if you move the cycleway, cyclists like me would probably stick with Bridge Road. simply because of that faster, more flowing nature. So, when you balance up the two, how does it come out? I don't really think St John's Road, it doesn't stand out to me as a really just great alternative. I didn't ride on it and go, wow, why didn't they pick this? What idiot selected Bridge Road instead of this road? This is magnificent. No, there was none of that feeling. It was, oh yeah, I can see why Bridge Road got the tick and this one didn't. And I think you'd have to do a heck of a lot of work on St John's Road to bring it up to par. Of course, the other thing is if it's not wide enough to accommodate both a separated cycleway and parking, if you move the cycleway over there, you're just going to annoy the hell out of another group of residents. And who the heck wants to have two groups of really annoyed residents? Masochists, maybe? I can't think of too many people who would do that voluntarily. Anyway, there's my analysis. If you go and ride the two, give us your feedback in the comments, and thanks for watching.